Do our intro. I don't have to turn it. I don't have to tell you. You want to start me? Please go to my Patreon and start now. Okay, so yeah. In about a minute or so, Brian Shuster, I can't pronounce his name, Brian, will be coming in. Now, the keynote is going to be talking about the New World. Yeah, we're still like data testing the New World. Only certain groups are getting in and testing it and looking at it. Just everything else and all. But yeah, this is going to be the keynotes about the New World, just everything else and all. So yeah. Do 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 do. La 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 la. And there it is, noontime. Keynotes with Brian, Enoch Pioneers, blah blah blah, VirtualCon, don't miss the exciting sneak peek into the future with Utherverse. Yep, we're gonna get a sneak peek. Sneak peek. And like I said, all of this is supposed to be like going live basically, next year, I want to say. Yep. Like I said, it's rumored that it's going to be going live.
Up on YouTube.
I hear music. Heard something.
World in about now.
We're live?
There he is.
Awesome. Well, a pleasure to see everybody here. What a convention this year. Really some fantastic stuff. I just need to thank Katie. I need to thank Ken. I need to thank Anna. Really, maybe the best convention so far. With everything going on, with so much development and so many moving pieces, this was really a challenge, and I'm delighted that there have been so many really good presentations, that the technology has been working, that everybody's been so positive. So really, thank you to my team. Obviously, very impressed. Also, before I really get going on my keynote, I want to send a shout out to people that have made this whole event possible. Our platinum sponsor, Intrigue Nightclub, our gold sponsors here, Castle Fashions, and of course, Utherverse.io, which you've been hearing all about. I'm going to talk a little bit about too. Our silver sponsors, Woo's Comedy Club, of course, an all-time favorite. Other Academy, very excited. Legacy Inspired Films, what a wonderful arrangement we've got with LIF, and great presentation. I hope you're all as excited about that one as I am. And Ambassador Squares, thank you all. And of course, all of our bronze sponsors here too: Pure Power Streams, Z On Streams, the United Nations Foundation, All Things Weddings, the Learning Center, and the Basic Welcome Club. I mean, really appreciate all of you. And of course, you know, the whole community here. I appreciate all of you too. And we're going to be talking a little bit about more about that today. So I thought, you know, I sometimes take for granted that everybody has been here from the beginning. But obviously, I know that that's not true intellectually. And I thought today it might be interesting to start out with a little bit of, you know, how we got here. This has been quite a journey, and I know that there are veterans among the people in attendance right now, but there's also a lot of new, relatively new people, and you probably don't know sort of the background, who I am, how this company came to be, and why it came to be. So, you know, I got my start in the internet about 30 years ago now. Back when the internet really wasn't at all a commercial medium. The internet was really just educational, you know, universities, which is how I got mostly introduced to it, and government. And at the time, I was an internationally syndicated newspaper cartoonist. But my comic wasn't appearing everywhere, of course. It was appearing in local markets. And I thought, you know, the internet, this web thing would be an interesting place to put my daily comic out and see if people from other markets could enjoy the cartoon. And I put up a website on comicstrip.com and coded it myself, learned this, you know, it was HTML 0.8 at the time, really just a trial language, but was able to update that every day. And I rapidly discovered why the internet was not at all commercial, because my site had become one of the more popular sites on the web. Which is to say that I was getting about 300 to 500 people a day checking out the comic. And I started to get bandwidth bills that were $300 to $500 a month. Bandwidth was expensive. Hosting was expensive, slow. And I discovered that websites like mine would occasionally appear, but they disappear after a few weeks. And I realized, of course, this was happening because it's just too expensive to host a website on the internet back then. There's no way to get paid. So I reached out to a buddy of mine from NASA JPL, and the two of us worked together to put together my plan for putting ads on websites. This hadn't been done before, of course, and I spent a couple of years trying to raise venture capital without any success, but was able to assemble tens of thousands of websites that were willing to participate in this first kind of affiliate program. When I say put banners on websites, I want you to think about just the challenge that posed, because it's not like it is today. You know, you throw a banner up and there's a link and you can track it and everything. Back then, you know, we're trying, first of all, to encourage sponsors to come in and buy advertising on this brand new medium. And we needed to be able to create markets. So here's a sports category, here's an automobile category, you know, here's an entertainment category, so that there was enough traffic to have it interesting, which meant we needed to track the nature of the websites. We needed to know what banner we were putting on each site so that we would know if we had more than one sponsor, you know, when they click the banner, where do they go? And we needed to be able to track back the website that was going to get credit for it and how much they were going to get credit based on how much we were paid. This was rocket science. I mean, literally a NASA engineer doing it with me, rocket science back in the day. And of course, it was successful. We did end up putting banners on websites. And 18 months later, I'm running from, you know, my $700 investment. I'm running a company with 150 people with offices in Silicon Valley, LA. I was in Nevada, and we had started to bring in millions of people a month to the internet. And the internet just exploded all around. You could see our banners on just about every website. It was almost a joke. that people would tell me, I can't hit a website without seeing your banners. We, of course, progressed very rapidly from that. Internet companies exploded all around us, and they were able to raise venture capital. In the meantime, we were exploring different ways to provide commercialization to the web. We invented pop under ads and got a patent on that. We exit traffic, I'm credited for pop-ups, a variety, multitude of advertising formats that really drove this explosion of web commerce. And as we progressed through that, we very rapidly started to pivot to what's the next iteration of the web going to look like? What is the next stage of the web development? So my team and I will post occasionally on my Twitter feed about getting a new patent here and a new patent there, and I'm up around I want to say 110 U.S. patents now. A lot of the next set of patents that we worked on, inventions that we worked on, centered around what is now called social media Web 2. We were calling it the interactive web. And my favorite patent in that family, in that grouping of patents, is a patent that I refer to as web rooms, which really laid out the precursor for what would become Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, and these social media applications. But when I started to see social media actually develop, I immediately became quite concerned that the technology which we had developed was being used in ways that, just like the pop-up, the pop-under, the patent office didn't get me the patents in time to be able to stop people from abusing it. They just waited and waited and waited, and of course it became hugely abused, and it was a horrible development, perversion of the technology. And it was the same thing really I felt with social media. We started to see these social media companies come up, and they generated using these same kind of algorithms that we had talked about and disclosed, but using them to generate algorithmic anger, to generate algorithmic loneliness. So, I started to give talks. I remember I was at South by Southwest one year. I gave a talk on the perversion of social media and how it isolated people. It made people feel lonely because, you'll have hundreds or thousands of friends. Back in the time, MySpace, right? You'd have 100,000 friends or something. And what you would see is only the best of what your friends wanted to show you. And so you always felt like you were missing out. Your life was not as good because they weren't posting the 99% of their life. They were posting this 1% and casting it in the greatest light. And if you have enough friends, on these social media platforms, you're always going to see somebody posting something spectacular. And it's going to make you feel like, geez, we never do anything. I remember when I was married and I was living in Nevada, we used to go, my wife and I used to go to the casinos regularly to have dinner because they were phenomenal restaurants in the casinos. And she would tell me, like, we never win. Everybody else always wins these jackpots. Every time we walk through the casino to go to a restaurant, somebody's winning one of these progressive jackpots. How come we never win? I said, look around the casino. There's got to be 10,000 slot machines here. And when somebody wins even $1,000, this machine rings, it wants attention. It rings for 2 hours before they get paid out. So what you're not seeing is all of the people who are constantly losing. You're seeing, you're hearing, because that's what they want to draw your attention to. That one machine that's paying out, that's going to ring for 6 hours today because somebody won $10,000. So it's not that we're always losing, it's that everybody's always losing. And, it's these rare events when somebody wins, but they want to make it seem like it's all the time. And that's what social media really was to me at the time. I realized that it's problematic. So if we fast forward a couple of years, I had switched to my other business partner, Ray. I was doing business with him now. And Ray and I, after the stock market crash and things sort of went off kilter, we regrouped to say, you know, what is now the next version of the web? What's the final version of the web? And how are we going to get from here to there? And how can we get there and fix the problems with social media and Web 2? And what we sort of hit on after a lot of brainstorming, you know, we took 3 trips to Amsterdam. And by the end of the 3rd trip, we were there really to take pictures of the great architecture, because we were planning on reconstructing Amsterdam as RLC and building it out, getting all the textures and getting, you know, these amazing churches and structures and canals and whatnot, so that we can really create a lifelike, you know, replica. We had, by the time we were done, we had really figured out that the ultimate form of the web was going to be a self-directed version of the Matrix, where you can live in a virtual reality construct that can provide you with everything that you would want to have, that's reasonable to be able to be provided at a low cost. It can create this new kind of wealth for everybody that participates. And at the same time, it can undo by, it's sort of like, I look at it like jujitsu. You can't stop social media. You can't stop people having their phones and being connected to it. But what you can do is you can pivot it in a way that takes the negativity out and puts a positive spin on things. And that really was the concept behind creating this immersive virtual environment, where people weren't looking at other people's only the highlights and only these algorithms that are showing them what they've already, you know, reinforcing what they already believe, whether it's true or not. Instead, they're interacting with other real people behind real avatars, and they can put on their best skin, they can put on their best person, they can put on their best who they are inside, represented outwardly, but you know, you're actively involved with other people. So you get the highs and the lows, bringing us back to our really fundamental humanity and fundamental human nature, in a way where we can lift people up when they really need lifting up, where we can support people, we can celebrate people when it's time to be celebrated, when there's, you know, positives and negatives, but have it all be genuine. And I'm really, really pleased and proud of the way that the community has developed in this ecosystem, where this really, I believe that we've achieved in Utherverse and in RLC. I mean, I've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars of donations from events that, you know, you all have made true and real. I've seen countless stories of people who have had real world problems, real life catastrophes that have been aided and helped by genuine friends that they would never have been able to connect with in this way on a flat web social media situation that could only be happening in our kind of immersive tight community. And this is what has driven me. You know, I'm asked all the time why I still fight this fight, you know, why I haven't retired to, you know, some island and just living a life of luxury. And it's because I have never been in this for a life of luxury. I have always been in this because I feel as though I have a potential, and this company and this community has a potential to be world changing. To the world right now, it continues to deteriorate. It's frightening and becoming more frightening. There are anger that is amplified consistently now in our daily lives and what we see on our feeds. And I believe that there is really only one solution, and that is to pivot it, to jujitsu it in a way where if we can bring the whole world ultimately into this type of environment, that we can form the core, the basis, the foundation for lifting everybody up. And going back to, you know, our tribal nature, which is protect our fellow humans, and you know, us to survive and thrive. So it became clear, started this project in the year 2000, I think, maybe 2001, first sort of brainstorming sessions. We really didn't know that whether everything would work or not. So back in those early days, I was really looking for some proof of concept, some way to know that what were brainstorming on was actually going to work as a commercial success. And over the course of a couple of years, we developed with a partnership with worlds.com. They had developed software. It had largely been abandoned. We ended up taking over some of that development and put together our very first virtual world on the worlds.com platform, and tossed it out and marketed a little bit to see if it would be commercially viable. And it was a hit right away. It was really just a glorified chat room with avatars and some regions, but it was successful sufficiently that I started to put resources in it. I started to put more and more of the company's attention towards developing this. Without getting into a long spiel about the history here, we ended up running into some problems with the worlds.com code base that were just intractable problems. It had been built too early. It just could not do the things that we needed it to do, namely, have millions of people come in, or even thousands of people, or really even hundreds of people, to be honest. There were just pieces that had not been thought through. So we then pivoted. We really started to think through what the software really needs to be able to do in order to flourish. And we pivoted over. We found Prototerra. We developed over the course of the next few years a really solid foundational piece that became Utherverse. And that software now has been running, I wanted to say 18 years, but it's 17 years and 11 months now. So almost 18 years. And I want to take people back to the beginnings of that because it has some parallels to where we are today with Xeon. So, of course, anybody who was here 18 years ago, 17.9 years ago, is going to remember the trials and tribulations of our first launch of what we now call our classic software. And boy, oh boy, there was, when I put together my first commercial website, the stress was ridiculous because there was nothing like the network that I put together back in those early days. And as soon as things were successful, my website was offline because there was no bandwidth. I remember being at a convention and talking to a bandwidth provider from WorldCom, and I said, I need bandwidth. What do you have? He said, well, we can get you a T1 line. I said, I need 3 T3s. I said, no, you don't. I need 3 T3 lines at least. Says, well, I could talk to you about a T1 or we just choked out. I mean, I was using half the bandwidth of the internet, a little bit of hyperbole, but when the site would crash and it would be offline for a week at a time, nothing was more stressful. I'm sitting here trying to run banners on tens of thousands of websites and the whole network crashes because it's too successful. We had the same problem with Utherverse Classic. So I'm sure a lot of you remember the not just the boot monster, but the crashes. And I mean, there were times when we were offline there was one time I think we were offline for almost a week straight. And I mean, do all this marketing and we've got all of these events and we've got all this stuff happening and we're offline for a week. I mean, fortunately, that didn't happen often. Usually it was 8 hours, 10 hours. The crashing was ridiculous. The instability was ridiculous. But it slowly and surely got fixed. It slowly and surely got improved, optimized. And then we start, well, while we're optimizing doing this, because it's a multi-year project. I mean, it really didn't get stable until the last, I want to say 6 years or so. It's been relatively stable. We had all kinds of features that we needed to develop. So when we launch Utherverse Classic, again, it's really a better glorified chat program. There's a lot more chat that you could do in private messaging, better than the worlds.com. But it really was very limited in terms of what people could actually do. We spent a huge amount of time and effort integrating a Web2 social center. So all of a sudden you can right click and you can have a profile and you can, have fun with the profile, and there's point systems. We ended up, we add more regions, we add a closet system. So, originally there was, just clothing for everyone. And then there was, packages of clothing that you could get. And then a closet system so that we could integrate a currency system. And we introduced Raise, and then we were able to introduce user-generated clothing, and we needed to create the upload system for that, and the protection systems for that, and the compensation systems for that. And then, boy, the big one, introducing Zabbies and introducing user property catalog, so that users could then have businesses, users can open up their own virtual worlds. They can suddenly deco, and they can get paid for deco. We're patching every Tuesday. So, so much, nobody's going to throw an event on Tuesdays. Nobody's going to have an event on Wednesday because we could very likely be down. But all of these pieces were big, monumental, foundational elements that allowed Utherverse Classic to really take its place as the prominent and dominant metaverse, although nobody was calling them metaverses until a couple of years ago. With the success, and a lot of the success was guided by community, and I have to say, I'll divulge a little bit of a trade secret here. It is a challenge to have so many potential projects, to have so many pieces that need to be put in place. I mean, if you think about even little things like glow stick, or even things like being able to drink and then have a sober up button, where do we put attention on the dance moves? Do we put attention on, adding new meshes? Are we hosting textures? Are we, how do we protect textures if they're hosted offsite? I mean, there's so many little pieces and big pieces and giant projects and small projects, and managing all of that and conceiving all of it and managing it is an enormous, overwhelming aspect of work. The community, you guys, make it much easier. I mean, it's why it was so important for me ultimately to create the forums that we use. When I would push on developers and say, this is an important feature, oh God, I have so many stories about it. But when I would push and say, this is an important feature, and the developers often, I mean, I've got a great team of developers now. But even the best, there's always discussion about what is really a priority and what are people really going to like. Having feedback from forums, having feedback coming from users to say, this is what we want, this is what is not working, here are suggestions to modify it. I mean, this is like, I want to say, crowdsourcing development priorities. And in a large way, it helped me to influence the developers, to convince them that this is what really needs to be developed, and it needs to be developed in this way, because this is what the users are saying. See, I'm not crazy. I'm not, this is what people are asking for, or I was wrong. Oftentimes, this is what users are asking for, and I thought that they wanted to go in this direction. And through this iterative process, back and forth with me, the team, the users, we have been able to craft what I believe is a really wonderful blueprint, which is Utherverse Classic, a really honed and fine blueprint that if, you know, Zuckerberg and Meta, you know, they're basically have started and they're tossing away $1 billion a month trying to figure out what we already have gone through 2 iterations to perfect. And it's not perfect. So I use the word perfect a little bit flippantly. It's not perfect, but it has been honed and iterated, and it now serves as the blueprint for what we are releasing now. So of course, I'm skipping a big part, which is after Utherverse Classic, I thought that we had figured this stuff out and we embarked on Curio. And I really thought that Curio was going to be what Xeon is now. But Curio ended up being a multi-year, many tens of millions of dollars investment that taught us also an enormous amount. It taught us a huge amount of that we can't just take what we had built with Classic and rebuild it on modern engines and rebuild it with modern graphics. There are major differences in the way that technology works, in the way that the tech stacks and you know, how to scale. All of that it ended up, let's say, an expensive lesson, but an important lesson. We developed a very good understanding of what the problems were. We have a big patent portfolio on now the solutions to, you know, these really intractable problems of replicating what we've done in a way that's really extensible, that's really charming and fun, and that can leverage all the power of these modern engines. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But you know, from Curio to the rebirth of the development, you know, it was really painful to say, okay, we're going to scrap that, and now we're going to take those lessons, combine them with the lessons that we learned from Classic, and we are going to build something new and something that will actually achieve all of the objectives that I've been talking about, that we've been pushing for you know, 2 decades now. So this Xeon, and with Xeon, we're able to take the lessons and the blueprint and this use case of more than 50 million users, franchised 17 different countries.
Oh, what's going on? What the hell? Oh, my Utherverse crashed. No! Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Damn it. I'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Okay now, well thank you for watching my video, or watching my stream. Please go to those links, follow me, click on them, hit that knob to get more info. That's what I do, hit that knob. So thank you again for watching my stream, and I will see you next time. Bye now. Yeah, I'll be right back. Apparently, I can do crashed in the background.